Welcome to Moving Through Menopause Live, the podcast. And here we are, members of the Menopause Collective, gathered together to bash out another wellness topic to do with menopause. So welcome today, everybody, to Dr. B. Welcome. Hello.
Hi.
all the way from Seattle. And we've got Jackie all the way from Southall. So I had to say that because it rhymed. And me, of course, Philippa, all the way from Lincoln, where I live. So today we're talking all about palpitations and heart health around the menopause. And you know what? Purely selfish reasons. This is a symptom that I've experienced quite a lot. And no, definitely a lot. There's no quite about it. And Jackie's had this too. So, you know, and you've had it too. Well, there you go. we can talk from our experience. And so palpitations, we'll talk about what they are, what it means, if indeed it means anything, and the kinds of things that we could perhaps do to help our heart health as we traverse this journey through menopause. And so thank you so much for joining me today. Let's go straight over to Dr. B to talk a little bit about palpitations. What are they? What the heck's going on? And maybe a little bit why we might be getting this more in menopause.
Well, thank you so much. I would just add a personal disclaimer to make sure that everyone sees their own physician and doesn't take my advice for personal advice. So that's out of the way. This is actually one of my favorite topics. Not that it's my favorite experience, because I too have had palpitations, but there's a lot kind of to peel back the layers. And so let me know if I'm talking too much. But I would say first, it's good to know that there are many reasons. Many of them are unknown and benign, meaning not serious. But it's super important to make sure that you first kind of see somebody if they're happening frequently, because you never want to assume. And I think that, you know, at a certain time in your life, you never want to assume that it's not something serious. Mm-hmm. So to kind of a quick run through of things that we kind of think about from the physician perspective, you know, is it what's called an arrhythmia, which is an irregular heart rhythm. And there are many different types of arrhythmias, some that are benign, they don't mean much, others that are pretty serious. And so it's important to identify those. There are some, you know, especially during this menopausal phase, there are endocrine or metabolic things that are potentially going on. And we often think of like a thyroid disorder or maybe anemia. If you have heavy periods, you know, you may be losing blood and so forth. So that's a possible contributor to some of these palpitations. You know, people are on medications, people take supplements, you know, they can have side effects. So that's a very common thing to kind of think about. There's the kind of mental health world, someone who's going through a lot of anxiety or who has panic attacks or just generalized anxiety disorders. So those can certainly contribute. And then I use the word drug in terms of substance. So, you know, if you're drinking a lot of caffeine or drinking a lot of coffee or, you know, black tea or alcohol, you know, those things, you know, or nicotine, none of us are smokers, but those substances can easily contribute to palpitations as well. Those are kind of the top, you know, list of things to think about. But let's kind of step back for a minute. And I know that we can share our stories. I will never forget when I was working late one day and everyone had left the building and I was doing my charting at the computer and I knew my heart had stopped. You feel that flip-flop, boop, and, you know, for a millisecond, you think you're dying. And then, of course, the heartbeat comes back and you're like, whoa, what was that? You know, it kept happening. And it was like 6 times a minute. I thought like, oh my God. So I went walking down the hallway to find a colleague, and yes, my heart sounded fine. And yes, my blood pressure was fine. I thought I was crazy. So I went back to doing my notes. Same thing. I thought, oh my God, this is nuts. You know, so I drove home, can't believe it, you know, sat on the couch, tried to relax. Same thing. You know, a very long story short, I got a cardiac workup. Everything was fine. which is a huge relief, by the way, when you think that you're actually dying. And so I might stop for a minute and kind of maybe Philippa and Jackie, maybe you can really talk about your sensations, because it's not a good feeling, is it?
No, and I will butt in at this point, because that was my experience, and I have two versions of what happens to me, and that was one. So for a moment, the regular rhythm ceases, and then you get this giant badoom, and that actually would take my breath away, and I would feel that sort of feeling, and yet I wasn't as I kind of went, oh, that was a bit odd. But I wasn't overly worried, and I don't even know why I wasn't, but I wasn't. And then the other version is the accelerated increase in pace of the heart. So what do you call that? Speeding up? Tachycardia, is it? Is that the word for it?
Yeah, well, it's part of the arrhythmia, and it is a tachycardia when it goes fast. Yeah.
Fast. So speeding up, and feeling like, why is it going so fast when I'm just lying in bed mainly? So at night time, being woken up with your heart going 10 to the dozen, like you've been jogging or doing something, and yet you were not. You were lying in bed. So and that generally goes along with feeling, I feel this first, and then I start to get a bit of a flush, a hot flash sort of a feeling. So tell me yours, Jackie. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so yeah, two different types for me also. Mainly, yeah, that really fast one. But I know for me, it's if I've had one too many glasses of wine, and that is my trigger. So I have to be really, yeah, mindful now of thinking, oh, okay, and sort of making sure I've got lots of water and everything at the same time. But it can literally last for hours and hours. Just this, it feels like it's just going on and on and on, and it just won't settle down just really fast. It's as if my body is just I don't know, drenched in adrenaline. It just, yeah, horrible feeling. And then the other one that I also get, which I always think, oh, it's a bit strange, but much like you, I just go, oh, you said it was a bit strange. Like, so I'm not been to a doctor or anything. But yeah, the other one I get is where it just feels strange, not right. And I have to start coughing. And when I cough, give it a good few coughs, it seems to settle itself down again. That's more intermittent. I couldn't say that comes because of any reason. I can just be sat watching telly, and then all of a sudden it just feels strange, and I have to have a few coughs to put it right. So, yeah.
Well, there's a lot in that to unpack. And I think for our viewers listening, that this is important to kind of dissect. So the kind of, jolt where you think like, oh, what happened? What happens is your heart stops very briefly. Instead of lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, it goes lub dub, lub, lub dub, lub dub. So that little pause, and the term is called a compensatory pause. So basically the heart pauses to get back into its normal rhythm. And that little pause is what you're feeling like, oh, that thump thump or flip flop. And usually it's called a PVC, which is a premature ventricular contraction, or a PAC. So those premature contractions are what's happening to kind of stop that rhythm. There's a quick pause, and then it goes back to the normal rhythm. It happens so quickly, but we feel it. It's not like we don't feel it. If you're busy during the day and you're super, focused on something, you may not. But when you're relaxed, reading a book or about to sit back for the night, it's or at nighttime, then it's really clear because you're not doing anything else. But I wanted to point out on Jackie's comments, the first one where you feel like it goes on and on. That, my dear, is a reason to see a doctor, at least in this country. So there is not to panic. Don't worry, you're fine. But it's the little blips that happen, like the annoying ones that are less likely to be anything. The ones that go on and on and on and on, I think of there's a term called holiday heart. People go out and they drink a lot of alcohol, they party, and not that you're doing it, but it's the effect of alcohol on the heart. And you can go into an irregular rhythm, and definitely the most common one is atrial fibrillation, or AFib. And that is something that is common enough. A lot of people say, oh, I was just kind of jittery, or, oh, I'm just, it's racing, or, oh, I was just nervous, or they kind of, explain it away. And then if you actually catch someone on a recording, they're an AFib. And that's a huge kind of, that would be an hour-long topic, but that's something to really pay attention to. Your cough thing is fabulous, because what's happening is you're coughing to reset. And the medical term for that is Valsalva. It's like it kind of bear down. You're coughing to kind of stop that, little irregular rhythm. And that doesn't worry me. That's kind of a very frequent thing. But I know that sensation, like you just want to just kind of, like restart something. It's a very odd feeling.
Oh yeah, well, so this is important that as you said in the beginning, we're not here to diagnose, and we're not here to give individual medical advice, apart from to Jackie, by the sounds of this. But there is no harm in getting a checkup, is there, if we're in any doubt? And I think the other reason might be if you're experiencing other symptoms, like breathlessness, and what else, nausea, and just generally unwell.
Yeah, there are a lot, the chest heaviness, people say, oh, well, I have acid reflux. Well, it may not be acid reflux. I really do think, and this is a really good topic for us to talk about for a brief moment, that heart disease in women often presents differently than in men. And dare I say, it means that I go back to the Framingham studies, 1960s or so, where all of the data, all the science was about men. Like, so finally, we are getting a lot more information about women and heart disease, yay. And so we know that the factors or the symptoms and signs are often different. And so it could just be a sense of doom or anxiety. I'm sure we've all had that at one point. Or it could be kind of, like you said, nausea, or feeling kind of a sweat, but not a hot flush. It could be, the breathlessness, or it could be kind of jittery or pressure sensation, not necessarily pain. The typical, pain that goes down, up the jaw, down your left arm, you're about to pass out. Yes, you can have that too, but that's not always the indicator. So yeah, you have to pay attention to all those nuances of your body, don't you?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, we do. And we know that women suffer differently to men. And as you say, the science is still catching up a little bit, I think. But so menopause, I'm kind of like, well, why? I mean, I'd never had anything like that before, perimenopause. And it was in perimenopause that began. There was absolutely no doubt about the time frame. So what is it about that time? Or is it just the age that I was at? I mean, let's say I've been a runner, my whole life, from being a teenager. 6 days a week, I would run, not awfully far. And I really wasn't very good at it particularly, but I was doing it, is the thing. Hiking, biking, swimming, lifting weights, doing all this active stuff that theoretically, the recommendations are half an hour of moderate exercise, 5 times a week, 150 minutes. I was definitely doing that. So I was a bit like, well, kind of why me especially? And is why? I don't know, Susan, any light on that one?
Well, I would say all those fantastic things that you have been doing, and that I'm sure you're still doing, are thought of preventing coronary artery disease, or in generically kind of cardiac events. It's not going to do anything to like prevent palpitations or innocent palpitations. So sadly, you could be the epitome of health and have palpitations and weird kind of blips here and there. So that's not a reflection of, your status. But your point about, why kind of in this perimenopause or early menopause phase, and Jackie certainly might weigh in. I bet you that there, first of all, there's no true scientific evidence. It's not like going through menopause causes palpitations. But when you think about and reflect on what's happening as you're going through early or in menopause, it's the things that I think we've already been talking about in many other shapes or forms. It's stress. It's, we're not sleeping well, and we have the hot flashes and night flashes going. And so, you're not sleeping well. And then you add on, the extra burdens of, this changing periods. And so all of this, contributes to this kind of catecholamine surge, or this kind of adrenaline response sometimes. And that can tip off all of this if other things happen. Let's say you're not hydrating as well, or you have a cup of coffee, nothing wrong with a glass of wine, but it just boom, it just kind of contributes to it all.
Yeah, well, so that is it. And I'm glad you put it so succinctly, that the heart is under the control of the autonomic nervous system, and that's this sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. And so actually, I did read a study only today where they were talking about the fact that if you are suffering from insomnia, you're more likely to be having palpitations. Well, we know that's going to drive that sympathetic response if we're not rested, and so stress. I was saying I'm, suffering a bit at the moment, having accepted an offer on my house and not found another one yet. So I'm finding those palpitations that had abated are revisiting me. And so this is this interesting into sort of weaving of our life circumstances. And Jackie, this really is something that you speak to, isn't it? This, the stress management and managing the mind and the thoughts and all of that, and isn't it?
Yeah, very, very much so. And it's really, it comes with training the mind to not be constantly focusing inwards, so if we're constantly being aware of, overthinking or what's happening within our body, then we are training our mind to keep looking for these things and noticing them. So, it's a great thing. I always, recommend people that to start adopting some kind of external meditation or mindfulness practice. Start looking outside of ourselves rather than internally, because we can do that really easily. We can either, just simply look out the window if we're sat at a desk and stuck at work all day, and just start to notice and let our minds focus in, and adopt some kind of meditative practice doing that, just simply by looking, or through sound, listening to birds, if we can do that. But it's really taking that focus away from everything that's happening internally and learning to place it external, and just quietening the mind down, and just helping to stop that constant whirring of that thought process. Because as you say, everything, whatever happens in the mind, we feel it in the body as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that, because I've often had a bit of difficulty when it comes to mindfulness being about paying so much attention to what is happening in us, within us. And
Yeah.
that, in situations where people experience chronic pain, say for instance, and this could be something that could be very worrying. As we said, we eliminate any potential serious causes for these arrhythmias or, we'll just call it palpitations. But once we've done that, then we are liberated to think of it less, I suppose. And what you were saying then about focusing outside of the body, a very healthy approach to helping us manage our stress levels, because the more we focus in on thinking about these things, they grow arms and legs, don't they? That's my.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to think about the fact that I guess I won't be homeless. No, because you can't make me move out.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no, it's fine. Don't worry about me, anybody.
Oh my gosh. Well, I definitely, I agree with Philip. I think Jackie is spot on. I think that, often it's appropriate to pay attention to what's going on. But if you had that reassurance, someone has checked you out, there is nothing serious, then when it happens, you can kind of retrain your focus and say, okay, I don't have to be panicked when it, does whatever it does. I know I'm okay. and then maybe reflect on that day like, oh, yeah, I didn't really hydrate as much as I should have. Or, if I was exercising or it was a hot day and I'm sweating, and maybe I did enjoy a cup of coffee, or maybe I did have a glass of wine, then I'm super dehydrated, and not just dehydrated, maybe there's some electrolytes that need to come with that. So there's a lot of things you can do. But I do like that kind of comment about just looking externally, and there's a kind of what I call it a 10-minute oasis kind of little scheme I tell people about, which is in the middle of a very busy day, take 10 minutes and literally do nothing, and looking outside if you can't go outside yourself, or looking at a plant, or looking at something just pulls you away, turn everything off, don't answer anything, and just kind of exist, and just notice things that are just beautiful to look at, and it just kind of, it really centers you in a way that can just kind of make a difference. So it is hard to do, and I'm sure all of you will agree, it's hard to do when you feel that flip flop, or it's doing this kind of like, what is, it's just not ending. It's hard to do that, and that's why I say, as long as you've had that reassurance, then you can start to kind of find what works for you.
Yeah, I like that. I thought something then. Oh, that was it. You were talking about in that process of noticing, notice the things that maybe you did that contributed to that situation. And I know for me, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, salt, I'm going to say. So obviously the dehydration piece, alcohol, definitely, caffeine, definitely. So I can pretty much guarantee that those things will absolutely contribute to me having that experience. And then the stress, managing the stresses, and even just blue light, our exposure to blue light, getting away from those screens, as you say, even just for 10 minutes, and definitely in that last hour before bedtime. It's practical steps, because I think, once you kind of know that this is to a certain extent within your sphere of control, then it feels a whole lot less scary, doesn't it, Jackie, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would, exactly the same as you. Too much caffeine. I can feel the change in the heart. The wine, absolutely. If I'm tired, yeah. If I've got anything on my mind, feel a little anxious, yeah, very much so. They all play in. So yes, we can be aware of what's going to trigger ourselves. We can take steps to change that. For people who are in menopause and are sort of experiencing an awful lot of anxiety, using those external meditations, very beneficial, because anybody who is anxious is already hyper aware of everything internal. So we have to take it external to help the mind to calm down. So this is where breathing exercises can then become counterintuitive, because if you start to do them wrong, you can actually set off anxiety even worse, and you're focusing on the very thing that actually has the ability to just create anxiety on its own. So just take it external.
Yeah, you make a good point. I've definitely dealt with clients who know that about themselves. When we start to, I say, bring the focus into the breath, and oh no, that doesn't work for me. And so things that you might think should help you may indeed not help you. In fact, so yeah. I mean, I like the idea of trying a few different things. You know that about me. So and kind of trust yourself a little bit as well, isn't it? It's that sort of if it's not working for you, then trust that this doesn't feel right. Generally I say, if it feels like it's doing you good, chances are it is. And so things that we can do to help ourselves to be heart healthy, because as you say, women are not immune from heart disease. We're not immune from cardiovascular disease, that is, and our heart attacks can be silent if we're not. That's just a fact for women. So to keep our hearts healthy. Movement is medicine is my mantra. You know, I'm always saying that. And so regular doses of moderate exercise, and it doesn't have to be running. You don't have to take up running, do you, Dr. B?
No, and I think that that's the point too, is that sometimes gentle exercise is a little bit more forgiving. Aerobic, you know, any good cardiologist is going to say aerobic, 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 but that can often trigger some of this if you haven't addressed those other things. And so if you aggressively work out and then you're sweating more and you've lost more fluid and electrolytes, then you meet some friends and you're not thinking and you have a coffee, or, you know, it just snowballs. So sometimes more gentle exercise can be a bit more forgiving, and certainly for our muscular system and tissues. I was going to say that thinking about my story at the office, and you know, someone checking me out, and then it kept happening again. I drove home, it happened again. Well, that drive home was really bad traffic. Well, that defines Seattle. And it took me probably about 35, 40 minutes to get home. Normally it's like a 10, 15-minute trip. And did I have any of those events during my trip home? Of course I didn't have any events during my trip home, because, well, if I did, I wasn't aware of them. You know, I was focused on driving. And it wasn't until I sat down on the couch and started relaxing, it happened again. It's like, note to self.
Yeah, that is it, isn't it? And they say this about, you know, lots of our body awareness of our bodies is mitigated by having that external focus. And I was on a chronic pain course, and the presenter said something along the lines of that he'd had an old injury and broken his foot or toe or something like this. And guess what? He said, the only time I ever feel pain in that toe is when I'm teaching this course. Right? Because he was totally immersed in this world of pain. And so that, you know, the idea, this power of the brain to conjure up these experiences, we cannot underestimate. And so focusing outside of ourselves, I think we agree on that, is a good thing. And distraction therapy, you know, whatever you want to call it.
A busy mind. Keep the mind busy. When the mind's wandering, it's got too much time on it.
Give it work to do. So keep the plumbing open with exercise, or and you know, last Friday night, actually, I went to this dance fitness class, and I'm totally rubbish, got no coordination whatsoever. Look at the girl teaching the class, you know, so enviously, but who cares? I enjoyed myself, you know, and I was quite hot and feeling that I was working, and yet totally having a ball, dancing to all this music. And so, you know, it doesn't have to be horrid. It doesn't have to hurt you. And really, what you love will even do you more good. There's evidence to suggest that doing what you enjoy, as far as movement is concerned, the benefits will be greater. So on that note, I think we've rabbited on quite enough, unless you've got any closing remarks.
I think we've done it.
Yeah.
I think we've covered it. So, but if anybody does have any burning questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And do join our Moving Through Menopause Facebook group. We'd love to have you along to help you, to guide you, and to learn from your experiences just as much as we learn from each of our experiences. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me today. It's been a blast. It always is. And we'll see you again in another few weeks. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend.